Hello, everyone. Anxiety Simplified, not going beyond psychology with a mother daughter duo. I am Joanne Williams, a 30-year mental health professional, sharing the science of psychology. And today, Sarah is off. But I am always looking at the science and at how we can help each other in this life just to have a happier life. So, today, what I'm going to be presenting is a video presentation. So you can see it on YouTube at Anxiety Simplified Podcast, as well as on Roku TV under Anxiety Simplified on Raven International TV channel. So you can look it up there. But what I'm going to look at is the rational, factual solutions for gun violence and what you and we can do to help this epidemic so that we don't feel so helpless. 'Cause that's what I came to. I just felt so helpless about what I can do. But looking at these facts, I know we can do something. This is going to be a fresh look without politics or division, but about facts, not feelings, about solutions for what we can do to stop the gun violence in America. And as a mental health professional, 30 years, I've never seen anything like this, but I was feeling helpless about what to do. And as I look at these facts of the issue, it became very obvious and clear to me that we can do something. And I want to present this to you actually in two parts because there was so much to it. I want to get to the solutions, but there's a lot of facts that I had never heard before that I really want to present to you and show you. Because in this presentation as well, if you're looking at it on YouTube or on Roku, where you can actually see the slides as I do them, and I'll describe them as best I can. But this is an emotional issue that I'm trying to stay away from and get more to the facts. But how can we not have emotions when our children are being killed with gun violence and is the number one way of cause of death in children right now? And if you're looking at the screen, I know it's a little blurry, but what it's showing is that now guns are that have killed more children than it used to be accidents or car accidents or suffocation or drug abuse. No, now it is guns from children ages 1 to 18. That should shock you. And if you're listening, uh, I hope you'll really listen to this because I'm going to share facts I'm telling you I've never heard before. And so you can have a voice, the people's voice, not politicians to stop this senseless violence. We do not need to depend on them. We can do something ourselves once you see what I'm going to share. Because the saddest part of this is that not only do we have the gun violence, but over half of the gun deaths are suicides of our children. And do you believe that suicides are preventable? I'm showing a chart here that, and I'll tell more in depth, but 54 of the deaths and the percentage of deaths and shooting violence was from suicides. In 2020, 43 was murder, but 3% was other, but more than half of this gun violence is suicide. And I'm going to ask you, do you think that's preventable? I hope you say yes. And what is this saying about our health of our society and the support that our children, our most vulnerable children, are receiving or not receiving? I almost feel like sometimes it should be a national shame that we're allowing this in America. Our children are dying from preventable reasons. And one of the reasons that I'm going to show in this next slide is that the bottom line is what the research is showing. Fewer guns equals fewer gun deaths. And I know people will be outraged, but it's the truth. And let's look at this. No more denial of this. Face this. our most vulnerable and most precious resource, they're dying in their own environment, in their homes and in schools. Then to me, as I see it, they're being sacrificed and they're suffering for what? Profits? Payoffs? So, are you willing to look at the facts that are based from research to look at doable solutions that we all can do something about? I'm putting up a pie chart that shows that it's really happening mostly to our children in our homes. I, if you want more guns, then you're going to have to say that you are unwilling to protect our children. This is an either or right now. When you do not care about your children's safety. That's what I've come to. And and I don't want to say that to you, but that's what my conclusion here. It's one or the other. Since guns are out of control in America, are you willing to have less guns? We have facts now so that we can understand the real problem, the ways to find solutions. And the way we do that, we do it like we did with car safety, that we can do something about it with regulations. And nobody likes regulations, but that's what we have done in the past that works. But what we see in the data about guns and gun death is that more Americans died from guns related injuries in 2020 than any other year on record, according to the CDC. So I believe that the largest issues that we're really facing about gun violence is in our home. With this pie chart in front of you on the screen, sorry, that 61% of the deaths, gun deaths, are in our own homes. Family violence. We are killing each other in our own homes. And because we're unwilling to talk about emotions, question mark, as a counselor, that's what I see, or ways to communicate with love and compassion to each other. Or I say, children, use your words as we do in kindergarten instead of using a gun to problem solve. But I also believe that there's a fear factor here that nobody is addressing because if I say to you, do you recognize that you must be afraid if you need 5 guns in your home? We have more guns than people in America. And, and you're not hunting or for personal protection, then to me, that's flat denial on your part. Like people say, no, I'm not afraid. Really? Then why are you getting that third, fourth, or fifth gun? Isn't one gun sufficient for hunting or for personal protection? To me, this becomes denial. And to deal with denial, like I've had to deal with denial with substance abuse cases, you have to stand tough for their own safety because denial blinds you to the truth. And people get so defensive. I have the right to have my guns, blah, 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 blah. And they're right. They do have the right. But when denial or your rights interfere with another person or a child's right to live, go to school, to the movies, outside concert without fearing gun violence, it's not about rights. Rights are not the issue here. Just like interventions we have to do with drug interventions that are affecting the family, it affects their thinking. We need to step up for the children's benefit or the family's benefit because they're not seeing straight. But the gun lobby, what wins out to keep the rhetoric going? I have the right to bear arms. And the consideration of the facts to me have not had a loud enough voice. We can do something about these facts. And I want to talk about some of the things that we can do with this because we take rights away all the time, all kinds of different ways. Wearing a seatbelt, wearing a helmet for motorcycle safety. So that's just not a valid argument. Our mental health is being affected by gun violence, whether you want to show it, know it, or not, or just want to deny it. It's still happening. And we're not receiving enough treatment. And hopelessness that something can be done, I think is rampant. I know I was feeling it. And now that's why I wanted to do this podcast or this show because I wanted to talk about it. Fear is a factor here in anxiety disorders, PTSD, and it can exacerbate depression. And what are the grief that is felt by thousands of families after the loss of a child? Number one, 84% of families divorce. So we're talking death and destruction. But think about the grief felt just of one family or one child that's lost, that's killed in a mass shooting. This is my estimate, at least 10 other families are affected. A friends of them, friend of a friend, a neighbor, a teacher, a cousin, grandparents, aunts, uncles of the victim. It goes on and on and on. This is affecting us all. And I wish we'd look at it as this is it's not, I'm not being shot. It's not, yes, it is affecting you. It's affecting us on so many levels. I don't even think we realize it. To me, this has become a mass grief issue for our country. More or less the trauma that can be from PTSD because of these work related shootings or in schools, movie theaters, concerts, experiencing it yourself, or just hearing shots fired, being locked in a closet, trying to survive. This can be a lifetime of remembering and re experiencing this event that affects you going places, trusting others, job performance, relationship. It can be a lifetime of anxiety and depression, which are the cornerstones of post traumatic stress disorder. And the first symptom is, have you experienced something that's happened in your life that you felt your life was threatened with serious injury, harm, or sexual violence? Think about this. Really, think about this. Have you experienced this? I'm asking more and more to my clients after COVID. But really, what has happened to our happy families? Doing things outside and having fun together. This affects your family's way of doing things forever. Obviously, mass shootings can happen anywhere, but the news coverage raises our anxiety about guns. But Americans were scared. And when they get scared, they get more guns out of fear. Americans have more guns than people in the United States. But what I'm finding really interesting as I'm looking at this pie chart again, that shows only 0.1% of the total firearms related mortality between 2000 and 2004. That's what mass shootings are, 0.1%. So that's what we're talking about. It gets all the national attention, but followed by the discussion about what particularly should be done to prevent it. Well, mass shootings have definitely increased steadily over time. The more important question is what a set of policies would have the greatest impact to reduce firearms homicides across the board. And when you look at this pie chart, you're going to prevent firearm policies must consider not only laws intended to reduce firearm homicides, But those who reduce suicides, unintentional deaths from the firearms in families, and in domestic violence deaths, which again is happening in the home, that is 61% of this pie chart. 61% is committed by a family member or acquaintance. Only 20, well, only, but 25% by a stranger, and then 14% by an intimate partner. And the mass shootings again are 0.1%. So we're saying 75% of the gun deaths are either family related deaths because I'm mad at you, I shoot you, um, or they're in the home. So we need to learn to communicate and use words. Like I said, like we teach our kindergarteners. This is what we're talking about is family violence here. And guns being so readily available. I don't, if guns aren't in the home, that family fight is not going to turn into death by guns, anyways. I mean, you stand much more of a chance any way you want to look at this. But CNN wrote in 2019 about the rising suicide rate, and the studies published in JAMA, the medical um, journal, found higher rates in rural areas and in large cities where there is a gun shop in the neighborhood. So, what can we start doing about our children dying from suicide? We can do something. And that's what I really want to talk about is what is happening also with the suicide rate with our teens. Because, of course, you want to do something for your child. But it has been shown that social media is driving up teen suicide. Several studies have found a correlation between social media and suicides. When researchers have linked aspects of social media use to depression and higher suicide rates, overuse of social media poses a significant risk, especially among girls. One study that was conducted aimed to look at reviews to identify current evidence pertaining to the words people put in social media and ways to use social media as a tool for suicide prevention. Think about this. And the study is, and I want you to think about, especially if you are a little older, you don't really get into social media, what it is like in schools now. If you were bullied at school when you were younger, yes, you could go home and get away from it. But if you're bullied online in social media, you can't get away from it. It's there and it's going out to 100 people. And they've proven that negative messages actually go out 10 times more than positive ones. So somebody's bullying you, it's going out to more people more often and making a bigger impact. What are you supposed to do? Your parents say, well, shut off your phone. How can you do that when your social life is social media? So we have a bigger problem here. And I think as parents, sometimes we feel a little helpless. And I agree. In Congress, not too long ago, they had this whole thing about TikTok and shutting it down and banning it because of national security. I wish they would look at all of the platforms equally because they know that all of them influence our young people, the way they think, the way they compare themselves to others, whether they have a better, bigger, whatever to show on social media. It is all so fake, but we don't realize it because they're kids, their brains are not developed yet to understand this. And as parents, we don't understand it. Just know that social media needs to be limited, certain times, certain amounts, and you need to help your children understand what to say to bullies, how to deal with this. They need to be able to come to you. And if they're not, this is impacting their mental health, and it can even lead to suicide. I shared 4 strategies in podcast number 41 on Anxiety Simplified. You can look on any of the major platforms. podcast 41 on what you can do and to understand why this is happening to teens and how to help them because it has become an epidemic, especially since the pandemic or during the pandemic. We are still dealing with the effects of like they're calling it post pandemic. They actually call it a shadow pandemic. This is not gone away yet. But I want to tell you three risks for teens and that are happening for teens that are risk factors for suicide. Current life stressors that are prolonged stress. It could be financial, emotional stress like bullying, harassment online from social media, but it's also your child's attitude towards life. I don't really care. I can't do anything. I'm useless. I'm stupid. Look at the way they are looking at themselves. They need support and they need it from family. They actually can get it from they'll believe it more from friends. So make sure who your children are being around are part of their health and not hurting them because this is part of saving them or not. Number two, historical risks. If they've had previous suicide attempts, they're more likely to have an attempt. Family history of depression or suicides. Know that suicides, if anyone has suicide, it affects 3 generations down for increased risk of suicide. There's been child abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence has been shown to be worse when it's ongoing than sexual abuse that's just happened once or twice. Think about this. That's sexual abuse. We know how harmful that is, but they're showing that domestic violence, hearing it, not even seeing it can be worse because they can imagine what's going on. They think the worst or blame themselves. So these are things, again, that are happening in the home. They feel neglected, or if there are traumas of any kind, family losses. Think about these shootings, family losses, even if it's grandma, not even, but it's somebody not directly, but it could be their caregiver. This is affecting our families. Physical head trauma that can increase, again, suicidal rates. Access, number three, I really want you to hear this access to lethal methods of harm, of guns in the home. They can find them. They know the combination. They can get them. Do not have access to guns in your home if your child or anybody in your home, for that matter, not just children, is increased risk for suicide. So easier access can make suicide easier. Okay. That risk is huge, more than any other deaths. Okay. And so we're going to look at some solutions. But before we do, I do want to look at um, that the number one cause of death in children 1 to 18 is from guns. It used to be accidents and or drug abuse, cancer, suffocation. Now, and automobile accidents, but now it is guns. And this changed in 2020. And so the death rate from guns is the highest it's been ever, or more than 20 years. And this is more about our society and about what we want to do about it. Understanding it is not hopeless. We can do something about it, but the data is clear. And really, the data too has really just come from that the data has been limited since really until recently. The federal government was barred from gathering it. But the indisputable fact is that if there are more guns, there are more gun deaths. And so I'm going to talk about more about that in our next video. But what I do want to show now is some things that we can do about this and some solutions for it. Because I want you to think about what you can do, what you're willing to do, what's your passion, what is your lane, let's call it, that you may want to work in. There's several here that I want to go through. You could look at this as a public safety issue instead of a gun restriction or maybe it's gun prevention, death prevention. Looking at this more that as public safety instead of trying to take somebody's rights away. What about the safety of the children? But like I said earlier, it's becoming either or. It's either, yes, limit your rights to have certain amount of guns, the ammunition, things like that. Or do you want your kids killed in school or at concerts? We have to make a choice now. Enable the CDC to do the research that's really needed because it's been limited. Support social and local violence programs. A lot of them are right there already in your city, boys and girls clubs have some of this. The YMCA, there's a lot of prevention programs, especially in the bigger cities. Some of them are really Baltimore. Even the mayor is about this now. There's ways we can do poverty is absolutely a predictor here. Investment. This is taxes. This is being willing to pay for social and community services. That's a huge difference that I see. I'm from the 60s, 70s, where there was welfare. There isn't welfare now. People think there is, there's not. There's not a safety net anymore. There's not a lot of ways. And I think the desperation is starting to show. I don't know what to do. I got to eat. My family's, I don't know what to do. And so that desperation makes people do stupid things. And I think guns get involved here. Invest in community services. The United Way, that is one way too that you could even give money. That's what they do is community programs. They never have enough money. Nonprofits, there's lots of different ways to do this, but you have to do something. And it usually does involve giving up something or giving money. Looking at a comprehensive community approach for evidence-based violence for intervention programs, you need facts. You need to see what's working. We can do this, but that does usually involve money. And so they say throw money at the problem. Well, you got to throw some at it because this is an epidemic. As a professional, I see this that more medical professionals need to be trained. They're in the hospital on trauma informed care. They need to refer for counseling immediately. There's victim programs. People need to be encouraged insisted in the family that you get help. Otherwise, they end up in the juvenile or the correction system. You don't want that. Get them the help they need. The media. This, again, the focus right now is on mass shootings. That's what we see mostly. What if we started to look at this with the family violence? How can we support families with this? But, and that's kind of, encouraging mental health treatment to teach the value of emotions and how to communicate and talk. This could be done in schools if we so chose to. But again, we're not even supporting schools with money or social services in schools. We need more of it for sure. Now, this one, I think it gets I don't know, but I've come to the media needs to become a show graphic images of the mass shootings that the assault style weapons have on a human body. I remember the Vietnam War, and they used to show bloodied bodies coming back from the wars, young boys mostly shot up. And we're not talking assault style weapons. They showed this on the 6 o'clock news, and it turned the Vietnam War around. We saw these bloodied bodies. I heard a surgeon from one of the last mass shootings at a bank. but he was talking about what an assault style weapon does to the human body. It's not the same as a handgun or other kinds of munitions. When they hit the butt, they're going so fast, they gelatinize things in our bodies. And I know this is gross, but I think that we need to see the grossness of how this tears apart or blows apart a small body, blasted against a wall. It will go through a steel door. And this is not what I grew up with on a farm, or a ranch with a little rifle. It's not the same. We need to understand the effects of what style, assault style weapons do on the human body. I think we need to see the graphics of a leg here, a little tiny sneaker on the other side of the room. I mean, I know this is horrible, but I think that could help us go, oh my God, I cannot take this. We have to do something. Use social media as a tool to prevent suicides. We know it's a problem. Let's use it as a tool. When we can do protection orders that are enforced for domestic violence, we can ban guns under the age of 21 years old. Their brains aren't developed enough for the cognitive ability to understand this. Safe storage, that's huge. That includes trigger locks. Do you know that even in the 1800s, they had these trigger locks? They had things and immunity firearms and the firearms companies. Smart guns fire only when a fingerprint or a pin is entered if used near a particular bracelet. There are things, if we are willing to do, to help prevent and actually support the police and their ways to help with these programs. Because think of the police, they're on the front line. This is like we're having a war. They don't want this. But how can they say that? Because they look weak. We have to say it for them. But the basic truth is fewer guns equal fewer deaths. And even as the National Rifle Association, NRI, suggests that guns stop violence, the way that it's very rare. One study found in 2012 that there is only 259 justifiable homicides for a private citizen using a firearm, when we're talking tens of thousands of murders and deaths from guns. So, this is what I wanted to share with you today. You can always find out more at anxietysimplified.com. We always want to share tools, but this will be on major platforms, offering ways really to make life happier. That's what we want. We have a radio show on Power Me Up station on iHeartRadio Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, and Mondays we have an encore show at 4:30 and then at 5. I have a YouTube channel, Anxiety Simplified Podcast, where the video presentation will be, as well as on Roku at Anxiety Simplified on Raven International Station. And you can always see more of us through our different platforms. But this is by no means a replacement for therapy or any kind of medical attention if you need it. We want to encourage you to reach out for therapy. That is a solution as well. We need more of this, but please reach out if you ever need it. And please live your purpose. Bye for now.